Hello everyone, Spacegoon here, and today I am going to be bringing you your Top 5 Wednesday. I am here instead of Julian because Julian asked me to be here, and possibly some of you viewers also decided you wanted to see me and hear me, so congratulations, here I am. Alright, so the list today is going to be Top 5 Diverse Characters of Video Games, which to me just means characters that are not, like, really super similar to each other, so we'll see where that goes. And I'm just going to talk about them for a while, and then the list will end, and you will go about your day. Yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? Alright, so, before we get started, there is a disclaimer that is in order. Top 5 Wednesdays were created by Ginger Reads Laney. She used them for BookTube. We're using them for video games. There's a link involved. Should be down below. Alright, let's get on with it. So coming at number 5, we have Admiral Gerard Dugal from the StarCraft universe. Alright, a little bit of background here. So, in StarCraft, there are several colonies in what is known as the Kapurlu sector. They were basically shot off into space. They were a bunch of criminals, and it was essentially just a big experiment to see, hey, can we get people out there to colonize planets? And if these people die, who the hell cares? Their colony ships malfunctioned, and they ended up way further out than they expected to be, essentially. And they lived up there for a while, once they managed to get their ships up and running so that they didn't just get killed by the environment. They then eventually regained space travel and then started fighting with each other. And then the Zerg Swarm showed up, which is a race of bug-like creatures that infest things and just eat the shit out of stuff. They're a hive mind. They're all connected by one entity that leads them. And then the Protoss showed up, which is they're a psionic race that is very highly advanced, and they were out to destroy the Zerg because the Zerg were obviously trying to kill everything. So they started burning Terran planets, and a big fight broke out. In any case, at the end of the first game, the Overmind is destroyed. So where Gerard comes in is he's leading the United Earth Directorate fleet from Earth to try to regain the colonies once they figured out that the colonies existed out there. Okay, so on top of that, not only is he supposed to regain the colonies, he's supposed to find the new Zerg Overmind, which is the head bug thing that controls everything that is Zerg, and take control of it using drugs and psychics to then use it against the Protoss, take care of them, and unite freaking everybody. Whew. Not an easy task. Alright, so why do I enjoy Gerard as a character? Well, he's interesting because he starts out as a very confident individual. Obviously, he's a very strong military leader. He's been picked for this giant task. The people of Earth believe in him. You can tell that he doesn't really want to pacify the Zerg and use them as a weapon because there's so many things that could go wrong with that. But he does it anyway because that's what his military leaders want him to do. So he goes out and he conquers the Terran Confederacy, or the Empire as it is at that point, conquers that, and then he does succeed in taking hold of the Overmind, which is a momentous task. But then things start getting kind of muddy. Because other characters in the game, there's Jim Raynor, who's a rebel human, and then there's Sarah Kerrigan, who's the Queen of Blade. She's a Terran that was infested by the Zerg, who has great psionic powers, and was kind of the Overmind's second in command before it got destroyed. And then you have Phoenix, who is a Protoss and friends with Jim Raynor. So these three characters basically get in his way and mess everything up for him. Using subversions and guerrilla tactics, eventually they manage to get enough strength to take on the fledgling Overmind that the UED has control of. They kill that, and Kerrigan gains control of the broods again. Once Kerrigan has control of the broods, she doesn't need Phoenix or Raynor anymore, so she kills Phoenix and sends Raynor packing. She tries to kill Raynor too, but he manages to get away. With them out of the way, she is then able to take on Dugal's fleet in a 1v1, a giant battle essentially between the Zerg Swarm and the UED. Okay, so with all that, hopefully you have a better understanding of the StarCraft universe just a little bit. That's just the very tip of the iceberg, but just give you a frame of reference as to where Dougal is coming from. So, throughout the course of all that stuff I was talking about, Dougal kind of descends into almost madness because Kerrigan sends an agent, essentially, a Terran by the name of Duran, who she infested, to get Dougal's ear. Now, Dougal's best friend and second in command, Alexei Stukov, suspects that Duran is up to something and takes off to parts unknown to try to figure things out. Now, Duran tells Gerard that this is because Stukov is trying to backstab him, essentially. So with that seed planted in his mind, he then sends Duran to go kill his best friend. But before Duran shoots Alexei Stukov, Alexei manages to get a message back to Dougal, essentially telling him what he knows and that he was trying to help him the entire time. Duran then disappears to go back to the swarm, and Dougal has to live with the fact that he sent an assassin to kill his best friend. He doesn't tell anybody else this is the case. As a matter of fact, he lies about it blatantly, saying that Alexei Stukov died a hero in a great battle. And this is one of the many reasons why the fight I talked about earlier does not end up going well for him. He faces off against the Queen of Blades and loses. The UAD Expeditionary Force that he is in charge of gets defeated and pushed back towards Earth. Kerrigan gives him a running start and then eventually wipes out the entire fleet. Dougal sends one message back to Earth while they are retreating to his wife.
Dearest Helena, by now the news of our defeat has reached the Earth. The creatures we were sent here to tame are untamable, and the colonies we were sent to reclaim have proven to be stronger than we anticipated. Whatever you may hear about what has happened out here, know this: Alexei did not die gloriously in battle. I killed him. My pride killed him. And now my pride has consumed me as well. You will never see me again, Helena. Tell our children that I love them, and that their father died in defense of their future. Over.
Okay, so obviously kind of heavy stuff, but I'm done with that now. So number 4, Elizabeth from Bioshock Infinite. So a little bit of background on Bioshock Infinite before going forward. I cannot explain the entire game to you because it's crazy and you should play it. But in any case, you are the character Booker DeWitt. You are sent to Columbia to retrieve the character of Elizabeth, who is the character I am talking about, from the tower to erase your gambling debts, essentially. That's a very simple premise, but it's Bioshock, so it gets super fucking complicated. But in any case, the reasons I like Elizabeth are because she is an incredibly intellectual person, but she lacks life experience. She's been locked in a tower, but that tower is essentially a library, so she's had 20 years to just read. She hasn't really had any human interaction, so when Booker breaks her out of the tower, everything's very magical to her. But throughout the course of the game, you get to see how something so magical as humanity gets slowly degraded through all of the fighting that goes on, until eventually Elizabeth herself ends up committing atrocities that she never would have thought she would have any part of. It's just a very interesting character arc, and the fact that the characters are knit so closely together both in a gameplay sense and in a story sense, it makes the whole thing just hit you a lot harder. There's so much that goes on at the end of this game. If you haven't played it, you should play it or watch somebody play it because it's definitely worth the experience. And hopefully, if you do go through that experience, you will enjoy Elizabeth as a character as much as I do. And number 3, we have the Narrator from the Stanley Parable. So I think the Stanley Parable is more of a experience than a game per se. It's more like a commentary on the way that gamers act and how we view progression. And the person leading you through this experience is known as the narrator. You play Stanley, and Stanley is completely mute. So the only person talking throughout the course of the game is this narrator that has no physical presence. But you interact with him by doing things like going through a door that he tells you to go through, or not going through a door that he tells you. And this will elicit different responses from him. And it's curious because sometimes he's your friend, other times he's an antagonist, and still other times it seems like you're the one that's antagonizing him, so it's very curious. And it's definitely worth it, in my mind, to go through, find all of the different storylines, and figure out what the narrator has to say in all of the different experiences that you run into. It's one of the better games that I've ever... Well, games, like I said, I don't really feel like it's really truly a game because it's more of a commentary, but it's one of the better experiences I've had sitting in front of my computer, so I'm glad that I played it, and the narrator is just amazing to listen to. He's got an amazing voice as well. So, again, if you own a computer and Steam, you should get this game and play it. It's not very long. Even all the endings put together is not very long, so it's definitely worth your time. Plus, it's usually super cheap on Steam, so get it and experience the narrator. I'm sure you'll fall in love with him like I have. Alright, we're getting there now. Number 2, April Ryan from The Longest Journey. April Ryan is a character that I've enjoyed for a very long time. I believe I first encountered her in Dreamfall, which was an Xbox title. Not like Xbox 360, like original Xbox, the big one that you could kill somebody with if you beat them with it. I like her as a character because she is an ordinary person that gets thrust into extraordinary events. Yeah, her early life is not very easy. She's adopted, and her adopted parents are abusive. She eventually leaves her home and knocks her father down the stairs, breaking his arm, and then gets put in a situation where she learns that she's what's known as a shifter, which is somebody that can, like, travel between dimensions. And there's a dream world, so there's, like, the dream world, and Stark, which is like the regular human world with technology, and then Arcadia, which is like the world of magic. And she crosses through these worlds and goes on this absolutely crazy adventure. But she, kind of in a Luke Skywalker sort of way, is able to move from being a fairly ordinary person to being the hero who saves everyone. It is interesting to note, though, that she doesn't become the hero that she thinks she is supposed to be at the end of the original Longest Journey. She goes through thinking that she is going to be the Guardian. The Guardian is a entity that essentially maintains balance between the two worlds, the magical world and the world of science and technology. When she gets to the end, she finds out that she's not actually going to be the Guardian, so she kind of gets cast aside after helping put the Guardian in place. And then she doesn't know what to do with herself. She's found out that she's gone from a normal person to an extraordinary person, but never actually gets to the point where she's fully realized, and then has to figure out what to do with herself after that point, which is where Dreamfall comes in, and she's still kind of lost in that game. She does eventually become the leader of a group of rebels in Arcadia, but she does lose her shifting powers and doesn't ever go back to the world of Stark where she originates from. Still an incredibly strong character, but she seems a little bit aimless. She's not exactly sure what her purpose is in the world anymore, so it's interesting to see a character to go from not knowing where their place is to having great purpose to really kind of searching again. So it's not like she becomes the hero and then everything's over. You know, hey, I'm the hero, woo, you know, roll credits. I will be the hero forever. Everybody will remember me. She's still remembered for what she has done, but life goes on, and life's hard. Even if you've done great things. I enjoy the depth of the character and the writing throughout the course of both these games. I haven't played Dreamfall Chapters, which is like the fan created series after Longest Journey and Dreamfall The Longest Journey, so I'm not sure how that goes. But I've enjoyed April Ryan as a character, like I said, for a long time and throughout the course of these games. Alright, last one. Andrew Ryan. Bioshock. So, Andrew Ryan, not April Ryan. They are two totally separate characters, have nothing to do with each other. Andrew Ryan is the antagonist in Bioshock, and he has to be one of my favorite characters of all time. He is completely an unapologetic idealist. He believes that every man is entitled to the sweat of his brow. Anything that you can make, that belongs to you, and you have the right to make it. Whether it's a scientific breakthrough or a piece of art, that's yours, and nobody else can take it from you. Obviously, there's not very many places, if any places, in the world that I can think of where you could actually do something like that. There's always going to be something, even at the very base level, things like taxes. So, what Andrew Ryan did is he took his fortune when he saw that he couldn't really make it happen on the surface and went underwater and built a city named Rapture. He then took some of the greatest minds that he could get to go along with him and formed a place where nobody had to worry about your art being censored or your scientific breakthroughs being held back by anybody's moralities. So along with building a city underwater away from everybody else on the surface, Andrew Ryan decided that not only did he want to be away from the people on the surface, he wanted to cut off all contact with the people on the surface. So basically, he just had his think tank of people under the ocean working on scientific breakthroughs. One of these breakthroughs was the discovery of Adam, which was a way of rewriting your genetic code, and it came from a sea slug, which I believe actually has some kind of basis in reality. I think there is a sea slug that can actually rewrite its genetic code. So, in any case, that's just a continuation on that idea, that you could then take that and rewrite your own genetic code so you could make yourself pretty or grow another arm out of your head if you really freaking wanted to. Initially, this didn't cause any issues. Then again, they also didn't realize the full potential of Adam until much later. But a person by the name of Frank Fontaine decided that he didn't really want to only deal with the people in Rapture and started smuggling things to the surface. Now, this made his company, Fontaine Futuristics, very, very profitable, and Andrew Ryan was completely fine with that until he discovered that it was through smuggling and contact with the surface. At that point, he essentially waged a war against Fontaine to stomp out his smuggling. Whereas Andrew Ryan did eventually succeed in stomping out Frank Fontaine's smuggling and destroying his business, Fontaine faked his own death and went into hiding. So Andrew Ryan thought that the threat was over, but Fontaine was really just hiding and building an army of rebels under the name of Atlas. Once Atlas had become strong enough, he attacked Andrew Ryan's city. Andrew would not compromise with him because he viewed them as parasites and killers, not anybody that could bring any real value to the city. Unfortunately, this led to a very long civil war which caused many deaths on both sides. At the heart of the Civil War was the genetic substance known as Adam. Once people figured out how to properly rewrite their genetic code, they started using it to give themselves what essentially were superpowers, like the ability to throw fire or move things with your mind. Unfortunately, enough change to your genetic structure caused you to go essentially insane. You became a husk of a human being and were left to wander the corridors of Rapture. And so Rapture fell as all of their citizens essentially became monsters. Andrew Ryan was still in charge, but he really wasn't in charge of anything. He led a ghost town. Strangely enough, though, this is where you enter as a player character. Now, there's a lot of explaining I would have to do to tell you how you fit into the storyline, and there's also some gigantic spoilers, which again, Bioshock is a game that you should play. If you are a person that enjoys video games, you should play Bioshock and you should play Bioshock Infinite. They both are fantastic games. And like I said, Andrew Ryan is a fantastic character throughout the course of the game. He's there over the radio, essentially. You eventually do reach him in the game, though. And once you get in the room with him, an incredible scene takes place. He essentially has you beat him to death just to prove a point. I don't know many characters that have that kind of conviction in their beliefs. I am correct in what I think, and you're going to kill me to prove it. It's crazy and awesome at the same time. Now, this scene doesn't just come out of nowhere. There's so many good lines throughout the course of the game that he says to you over the radio that makes you believe that he has the conviction to make this scene work. So when you walk in there and it happens, you know that really it couldn't have gone down any other way. Alright, there it is. That's my list. Now, I know I got a bit rambly at times, but that's basically because I went into this with no plan outside of who I was going to talk about. So, my apologies on that if I became hard to follow at any point. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. I might make more in the future, but my voice is very tired now, so I think I'm going to give it a break. But before I go, I'm going to leave you with the words of Andrew Ryan, and let us fade out into it, shall we?
A man has a choice. I chose the impossible. I built a city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the great will not be constrained by the small, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality. I chose to build rapture. But my city was betrayed by the weak. So I ask you, my friend, if your life were the prize, would you kill the innocent? Would you sacrifice your humanity? We all make choices, but in the end, our choices make